Alexander III of Macedon, the 20th or the 21st of July 356 BC to the 10th or the 11th of June 323 BC, commonly known as Alexander the Great, was the king of the ancient Greek kingdom of Macedon. He is sometimes referred to in Bengali as Alexander. He succeeded his father Philip II in 336 BC at the age of just 20 and spent most of his reign conducting extensive military campaigns across Western Asia and Northeast Africa. By the age of 30, he had established one of the largest empires of the ancient world, stretching from Egypt to northwestern India. 5. He was undefeated in all his battles and is considered one of the greatest and most successful military leaders in history.
Alexander was closely tutored by Aristotle until the age of 16. In 335 BC, shortly after his accession to the throne of Macedon, he began a campaign in the Balkans and re-established Macedonian control over Thrace and Illyria. He then marched on Thebes, which he later completely destroyed. Alexander was then appointed commander of all Greece. In this capacity, he implemented his father's planned Pan-Hellenic project by leading all Greeks in an attack on Persia, 8-9. In 334 BC, he began his series of military campaigns with an invasion of the Achaemenid Persian Empire, which lasted 10 years. After his Anatolian campaign, Alexander destroyed Persian power in several key battles, including Issus and Gaugamela. As a result, he overthrew Darius III and conquered the entire Achaemenid Empire. After the fall of Persia, the Macedonian Empire expanded from the Adriatic Sea to the Indus River. With the desire to reach the ends of the earth and the Great Outer Sea, Alexander began his campaign in India in 326 BC and won an important victory against the Indian king Puru, who ruled what is now Punjab at the Battle of Bidda. He was forced to return home by the demands of his army, eager to return home from the banks of the Baipasha River. He died in the Mesopotamian city of Babylon in 323 BC. He had planned to establish Babylon as the capital of his empire. With Alexander's death, his planned commercial and military campaigns, which began with the Greek invasion of the Arabian Peninsula, were no longer realized. His death was followed by a series of civil wars that lasted for several years, which resulted in the Macedonian Empire being divided into various parts under the control of Alexander's various generals. Alexander was born in 356 BC on the 6th day of the Greek month of Hecatombion, or on July 20th or 21st, in Pella in the Kingdom of Macedon. He was the son of Philip II of Macedon and his fourth wife, Olympias. Although Philip II had 7 or 8 wives, Olympias was Philip's chief wife, as she was the mother of Alexander. There are several myths about Alexander's birth. According to the Greek biographer Plutarch, on the day of her marriage to Philip, Olympias was struck by lightning. A few days after the marriage, Philip had a dream in which Olympias's vagina was sealed with a seal bearing the image of a lion. Plutarch explains some of these miraculous events by saying that Olympias was pregnant before marriage and that Alexander was the son of Zeus. However, according to historical historians, the ambitious Olympias propagated the story of Alexander's divine paternity. On the day of Alexander's birth, Philip was planning the siege of Potidaea. On that day, he received news from his general Parmenion of the defeat of the armies of Illyricum and Paeonia and of his horse's victory in the Olympic Games. It is said that on Alexander's birthday, the Temple of Artemis, considered one of the wonders of the ancient world, was destroyed. The myth is that this happened because Artemis was going to celebrate Alexander's birth. It is believed that all these miraculous stories were popularized after Alexander ascended the throne in order to portray him as superhuman and destined for great deeds. As a child, Alexander was raised by a servant named Lanik. Later, he was educated by Leonidas, a relative of Olympias, and Lysimachus, a general of Philip II. Like other noble Macedonian youths, he was taught to read, fight, and hunt. When he was 13, Philip II considered to Greek educators, Isocrates and Speusippus, to teach Alexander, but they refused. Eventually, Philip II appointed the Greek philosopher Aristotle as Alexander's tutor and provided him with the Temple of Maias as a classroom. In return for Alexander's education, Philip II arranged for Aristotle's city of Stagira to be rebuilt. He bought and freed all the former inhabitants of the city who were living as slaves and pardoned the exiles. At the Academy of Maias, Alexander was educated with young men from the noble families of Macedonia, including Ptolemy I Soter, Hephaestion, Cassander, and others, most of whom later became Alexander's friends and commanders in his campaigns. Aristotle taught them medicine, philosophy, ethics, religion, logic, and the arts. His education instilled in Alexander a deep love for Homer's epic poem, the Iliad, which he took with him on all his future campaigns. Alexander's education under Aristotle ended at the age of 16. At this time, Philip II appointed him as his regent and heir and attacked Byzantium. In Philip's absence, the Maioi tribe of Thrace revolted, and Alexander quickly marched against them, ousting them and founding a city in their territory called Alexandropolis Mytica. When Philip returned from his campaign, he sent Alexander to suppress a revolt in southern Thrace. During this campaign, Alexander saved his father's life during a campaign against a Greek city called Perinthus. In 338 BC, Philip and Alexander, with great difficulty, captured Thermopylae near Thebes and began their campaign further south towards the city of Elatea. When Demosthenes, on the Athenian side, sought Thebes' assistance against the Macedonians, Philip offered Thebes an alliance. But when Thebes made an alliance with Athens, Philip captured Amphissa. He then resumed his march towards Elatea and offered peace, but both Athens and Thebes rejected the offer. As Philip moved south, his opponents blocked him at Kyrenia, and Philip attacked from the right and Alexander from the left. Philip II deliberately retreated, luring the inexperienced Athenian warriors into the battle, breaking their defenses, while Alexander and Philip's generals were able to break Thebes' defenses. They then attacked them, first defeating the Athenians and then surrounding the Theban army and defeating them 36. After this victory, Philip II continued his campaign as far as Sparta, where he was received with honor in every city except Sparta. At Corinth, Philip II established a heavenly alliance with every Greek city except Sparta, which made him the commander-in-chief of the alliance. Upon returning from the campaign, Philip married Cleopatra Eurydice, the niece of his general Autolycus. This marriage made Alexander's position as heir to the throne somewhat precarious, as any child of Cleopatra would be Macedonian on both sides of the family line, as Alexander was Macedonian on his father's side but Epirus on his mother's side. At the wedding, when Autolycus, drunk, mentioned a legitimate heir from the union of Philip and Cleopatra, Alexander apparently threw a goblet at his head, but when the drunken Philip sided with Autolycus, Alexander sought refuge with the king of Illyria at Dodona, leaving his mother Olympias near his maternal uncle Alexander I, king of Epirus. Although Alexander had defeated Illyria in battle a few months earlier, he was still welcomed in Illyria. However, Philip was never willing to abandon his politically and militarily trained son, and Alexander returned to Macedon 6 months later through the mediation of a family friend named Damaratos. The following year, Pixaderus, the satrap of the Persian province of Caria, proposed the marriage of his eldest daughter to Alexander's elder half-brother Aridaeus. Fearing that Aridaeus would be considered as Philip's heir, Alexander sent Thessalus, an actor from Corinth, to Pixaderus with a message that he should consider marrying Alexander instead of marrying his daughter to Aridaeus, the illegitimate son of Philip II. Philip, upon hearing of this, rejected the marriage proposal and imprisoned Thessalus. In 336 BC, during the wedding of his daughter Cleopatra to Alexander I, king of Epirus, Philip II was assassinated by his bodyguard Pausanias. Pausanias was killed while fleeing. With the support of the Macedonian nobility and army, Alexander ascended the throne as ruler of Macedonia at the age of only 20. Conserving power, Alexander began to eliminate potential enemies as soon as he took the throne. He first killed the previous king of Macedon, Amuntus IV. To Macedonian nobles, Hermes and Arrhabaeus were executed for the murder of Philip II. Alexander's mother, Olympias, murdered Europa and Charanos, the children of his half-sister Cleopatra Eurydice, and Cleopatra Eurydice probably committed suicide. Alexander also ordered the assassination of Autolycus, the commander of Asia Minor. It is believed that this decision was made in revenge for an earlier insult by Autolycus. 51. Alexander released Aridaeus without harming him, as he had become mentally disabled. As news of Philip II's death spread, revolts broke out in Thebes, Athens, and Thrace, and Alexander took swift action. He marched south towards Thessaly with 3,000 Macedonian cavalry. The Thessalian army was stationed in the valley between Mount Olympus and Mount Ossa. Alexander ordered his army to climb Mount Ossa. The next day, the Thessalian army quickly surrendered when they saw Alexander's army behind them. Alexander's army quickly marched south towards the Peloponnese. At the city of Thermopylae, he was received as the leader of the League of Heavenly Friends. He then marched towards Corinth, where Athens sued for peace and Alexander pardoned the rebels. It was in this city that his famous conversation with the philosopher Diogenes took place. In this city, he was declared commander-in-chief of the war against Persia. Before his invasion of Asia, Alexander wanted to secure his northern frontier. In the spring of 335 BC, he moved to suppress several rebellions. Marching east from Amphipolis, he defeated the Thracian army at the foot of Mount Hymes. The Macedonian army then reached the kingdom of Tribali and defeated its army on the banks of the Ligneus River. After 3 days of marching, Alexander encountered the Gets on the banks of the Danube River and crossed the river at night in an ambush and defeated them. At this time, King Cletus of Eleuthera and King Glaucias of Talantioi rebelled against Alexander's authority. The Macedonian army marched west and defeated these two kings, securing the northern frontier of his kingdom. During Alexander's northern campaign, Thebes and Athens rebelled again, so he marched south. Thebes declared war on Alexander and was defeated, and Alexander destroyed the city of Thebes. This resulted in Athens' surrender and a temporary peace in Greece. Alexander then focused on his campaign in Asia, appointing Antipater as regent. In 334 BC, Alexander's army crossed the Hellespont with an estimated 48,100 infantry, 6,100 cavalry, and 38,000 sailors from Macedonia, Thrace, Illyria, and Paeonia, 67, in 120 ships. Alexander threw a spear into Asiatic soil, declaring that he had received Asia as a gift from the gods. On the 8th of April, after initial success at the Battle of Granicus, the Persian provincial capital of Sardis surrendered to Alexander. He then granted autonomy to various cities along the Ionian coast. He had to demonstrate his military prowess in capturing Miletus, which was occupied by the Persian army. Further south, at Halicarnassus, Alexander conducted his first major siege, gradually forcing the Persian satraps Orontobates and Memnon of Rhodes to flee by sea. Alexander entrusted the governorship of Caria to Adar. From Halicarnassus, Alexander continued along the mountainous Lycia and the plains of Pamphylia, capturing all the coastal cities. With no other important ports beyond Pamphylia, Alexander began his campaign inland. At Termissus, Alexander captured Pisidia, but did not cause much destruction. Upon reaching Gordium, the capital of ancient Phidias, Alexander untied an insoluble knot, which was said to be possible only by the ruler of Asia. He cut this knot with his sword. In 333 BC, Alexander arrived in Sicily from Taurus with his army. After a long illness, he set off for Syria. Unwilling to face the large army of Darius III, he returned to Sicily and defeated Darius III at the Battle of Issus. Darius III fled the battlefield, leaving behind his mother Sisyphagmus, his wife, 2 daughters, and most of his personal wealth. Darius sent Alexander a peace treaty, offering to pay 10,000 coins as a ransom for his lost lands and his family, but Alexander rejected this offer, declaring himself the ruler of Asia. Alexander then marched along the coast of Syria and the Levant, and in 330 BC, he besieged Tyre, capturing the city with great difficulty. He killed all the able-bodied men in the city and sold the women and children into slavery. Egypt, after destroying Tyre, most of the cities on the Egyptian side quickly surrendered. Alexander marched south towards Egypt without damaging Jerusalem. However, he encountered heavy resistance at Gaza. Although he succeeded in capturing this fortified city on a hill after 3 attempts, Alexander was seriously wounded in the shoulder. As in Tyre, all the able-bodied men of Gaza were killed and the women and children sold into slavery. When Alexander marched into Egypt in 330 BC, he was welcomed as a liberator. He was proclaimed the son of the god Amun at the Siwa oasis in the Libyan desert. To establish Alexander's divine image, his image on coins was depicted with ram's horns on his head. While in Egypt, he founded Alexandria,